Thank you very much to Crazy Cactus 72 for becoming a member of the Kinetic Rugby League channel. If you guys would like to become members, you can do by clicking the join button below this video and joining for as little as £1 per month. But I do need to let you guys know there is an interview on the Kinetic Rugby League website with Huddersfield Giants player Leroy Cudjoe. Now, I'll leave a link in the description below this video. If you click that link, it'll take you to the Q&A that I managed to get with Leroy Cudjoe of the Huddersfield Giants, and go read that today, after this video, of course. But that's it. Let's crack on with the video. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Kinetic Rugby League channel. Up on the screen, there is a recap of last round's predictions. Last round's abysmal predictions. But let's crack on with the first game of this week. Kicking things off this week, we have the Leeds Rhinos taking on the Leigh Leopards. This will be a hell of a game. If I'm wrong on this one, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not going to be too bothered if I am. But on current form, Leeds have won 4 in their last 5 Super League games. Leigh have won 3 in their last 5 Super League games, which is also 3 games in a row, 3 wins in a row. Leeds will be very disappointed with their performance against Saints. Luckily for them, I don't think the issues were due to attack or defence necessarily, but it's more just cleaning up possession, making sure that they complete sets, they don't give away too many penalties. Those things can be fixed weekly. Like, if your attack is poor, that could take time to fix. If your defence is poor, that could take time to fix. Both of those for Leeds have been pretty good, defence more so. But it's not like there are systemic issues that are going to take time. It was just a real off day for Leeds, which those kind of things, dropping the ball a bit too much, giving away too many penalties, they can fix that for the next week. That's easily fixable. So I think there's at least a positive to look at there for Leeds. Now with Leigh, they've been putting in some really consistently strong performances, especially through the middle. There was a period a few months ago I did sort of knock their middles, and I think they really lacked a bit of sting and penetration up front. But over the last few weeks to maybe months, I suppose at this point, they've been looking really good. And that's since Joe Offengawi's come back in, but Mulhern's performing really well. Offengawi, Liu, Trout, he's been playing more in the back row, but he's been looking good. And then some of the carries out the backfield, I think Hanley's done a good job, so has Liu. So I think in terms of the battle up front, the carries, looking for quick play of the balls, post-contact meters, offloads, I think both sides will be getting a lot of those, a lot of offloads, and that'll bring... I think it works out better for Leigh if the game's quicker. I think the slower the game, the better it suits Leeds. But if the game is quicker, I think that fits more towards Leigh's style. Playing off the cuff with Lamb, with Ipape, with Armstrong, I think they'd prefer that kind of style. Now, I think it's likely to be a back and forth game as well. I think it could be very easily Leeds or Leigh score first and then the other responds, and it could be like that throughout the game. But I do think, regardless of how the tries are distributed, I'm going to have to trust the team that is the stronger defensive side this year, which is Leeds, and the difference in attack this year is only 1 point. I think it's Leigh have 305, Leeds have 304, but the thing that differentiates them the most is defence, and I think Leeds have shown a fair few times over the last few months that they can be very reliable in clutch, high-intensity moments towards the back end of games, and I think this could be that kind of game where they'll be needed again. I know Leigh did it against Wakefield, but I think Leeds have shown more evidence of being capable of that. So, for a prediction, I'm going to go with Leeds Rhinos 24, Leigh Leopards 20. Next up, we have Hull Kingston Rovers taking on Wakefield Trinity. Starting with form, Hull KR have won 5 in their last 5 Super League games. Wakefield have won 3 in their last 5 Super League games. Wakefield go into this off the back of a cracking win against Wigan at the weekend, so they'll be likely full of confidence. But even their 2 losses in recent weeks were by 4 points against both Leeds and Leigh. 2 very strong sides. So it ain't looking bad for Wakefield at the moment. Now, Hull KR have been barely giving up any control in games for months at this point. Not weeks, months. And there are no signs of slowing down. There doesn't appear to be any real weakness. The worst they've looked, I think, was the Challenge Cup final. But weather conditions didn't help, and, the occasion, all that good stuff. But at least in Super League, for the past few months, KR haven't looked like slowing down. So can Wakefield cause an upset this week? I think yes, they can. But will they is a different question. When I spoke about Wakey last week, when I talked about the pace in their attack, if they want to beat this Wigan defence, they need to be at least quick. They had some issues where They might be a little bit disconnected when they throw the ball around, but they at least need to be quick, which Wakefield are in attack. The same applies this week. If they want to get around the outside or break this Hull KR defensive line, they've got to be quick at a bare minimum, which Wakefield are. So that's a huge positive for them in terms of this matchup. One thing I think Wakefield have done quite well over the last few weeks is adapt to the injuries. They've had to deal with quite a lot. Change to the spine, change to the forwards or backs in general. They've dealt with a lot of injuries, but I think in recent weeks or maybe months at this point, they've learnt to adapt better than towards the start of the season. So that's another positive for Wakefield. But I think they are a little bit erratic. When they move the ball around, when they try and force things inside their own half, they can be a little bit erratic. I think sometimes the kicking game from Leigh can be a little bit inconsistent. So there's two things there I think we could see against Hull KR. And Hull KR do regularly win the battle up front. I think there's a great forward pack that Wakefield can bring to this, by the way. But Hull KR, they just know how to slow down the ruck enough. They stop teams from getting offloads. I barely see teams getting offload against Hull KR. It is ridiculous. And they don't allow many easy post-contact meters either. I think Hull KR will likely win that battle up front. I don't think they'll pin Wakefield back too much, because I think they'll have a go at shifting the ball, and they'll find line breaks here and there. But I just think over 80 minutes, the pattern of play that Hull KR get into, left to Lewis, kicking into the corner, pinning teams back, I think that'll just wear Wakefield down over 80 minutes. I think they'll put in a great effort. But I just think right now, Hull KR are just on a different level to all other teams right now. I'd love it if Wakefield could cause an upset. That'd be great. But I just don't know if it's going to happen this time. I just don't know. So I'm going to go with Hull Kingston Rovers 26, Wakefield Trinity 14. Next up, we have the Warrington Wolves taking on Hull FC. Starting with form, Warrington have only won 1 in their last 5 Super League games, whilst Hull FC have won 3 in their last 5 Super League games. Now, Warrington just can't defend at all at the moment. It's quite disappointing to see. Usually on the goal line, it's not great. Sometimes you'll see some resilient efforts on the goal line, but that right edge defensively, that's normally Thulis and Roderick Ty's edge of the field, it does have some issues defensively. I don't think Warrington are too bad defending in the opposition's half or in the midfield. I don't think we allow too many line breaks. Sometimes we do allow some, but I don't think we allow too many, which is at least a good sign. But it's once teams pin Warrington back on the goal line, that's when most of the points start to kind of come flooding in. And one thing that doesn't help is that Warrington are quite weak through the middle. So it's easy for teams to get the post-contact meters, offloads, quicker play the balls, to extend the plays, make more meters, and then find it easier to get Warrington pinned back onto their own goal line. So given that Hull FC is strong up front, it could work in their favour massively this week. Hull FC have been looking decent in recent weeks. I think their performance against Cass was a drop-off. It was uncharacteristic of what we've seen from Hull FC in the last few months. So I'm not going to read into that one too much. It was just an off day, really. But they have been looking like a decent side. They're clear on how they want to play, and they're executing fairly well in possession. And I think in defence, they are fairly solid as well. They're still far from perfect, but Hull FC are a good side. I am expecting Hull FC to basically dominate through the middle with Knight, SASA, Aiden, SA, Ashworth, whoever it's going to be. I'm expecting Hull FC to basically dominate up front. Getting regular offloads as well. I think we allow way too many offloads. We also miss way too many tackles, as Warrington that is. Warrington miss way too many tackles. And I think there are a few individuals in that Hull FC team that can punish weak defensive lines. And I think we will see, I think with Williams in the side more, getting more reps with Sneed, and Thulis getting more experience at fullback. I'm actually not sure if Dufty comes back in this week. I think he might. I think there's a chance that Warrington are more resilient this week defensively, because we're going to have to start focusing on that. We can't string points together. We're going to have to start focusing on defence at some point and actually getting back to what Warrington was last year. But I just don't know if Warrington's got the firepower to make this one close enough or to actually compete. So I'm going to go with Warrington Wolves 12, Hull FC 24. Next up, we have Catalans Dragons taking on the Huddersfield Giants. On recent form, Catalans have won 0 in their last 5 Super League games. Huddersfield have won 1 in their last 5 Super League games. Huddersfield have actually won a game recently, as I just mentioned. And they were very close to 2 upsets before that. I think the game against Leigh, there was an attempt of a comeback, maybe wasn't as close, but the week after against Wigan, which was only 2 rounds ago, was exceptionally close, and they lost with 2 seconds left on the clock. So the Giants, now that they're getting regulars back in, are looking like a strong and competent side, which is good to see for them, because it was a poor start to the year. But I like Luke Robinson, and I want him to do well, so I'm quite happy for Huddersfield. I believe Catalans are missing Satai due to a match ban. I believe he's missing this week. So if that's the case, I think even if he is playing, Catalans are coming up against a Huddersfield side that looks really strong through the middle. I think the Giants, 1, they've got big bodies. 2, they've got big bodies that are playing with serious intent. They're not just kind of taking a carry for the sake of it. They're actually pumping the legs, trying to push players back. You can see with the energy and intent. I saw it. There was a major difference in intent with the carries looking at Warrington compared to Huddersfield. The forwards of Huddersfield just want the meters. You can tell they want the meters. You can tell they want the quick play the balls. You can tell they want the offloads. The energy from Huddersfield's pack just looks good this year. And I think it has done since round 1. The pack has looked good since round 1. Of course, there was a period where had a lot of injuries to deal with and there was more chopping and changing. But I think that's been a regular positive for the Giants. The forward pack is good. And now they're getting more regulars back in the spine and in the backs. They can build more consistency and cohesion. Catalans also had an improved performance against Leigh, but still have those 3 other batterings before that, scoring 0 points 3 games in a row. That's still there in recent weeks, and that's still what I'm expecting this Catalans team to look like. Maybe that effort against Leigh was just them overperforming. I think we'll kind of have to see how it goes this week, but it's possible that was just them overperforming, and they might still be that 34-46-0 team that we've seen over the past few weeks. Now, whereas Huddersfield, the recent efforts, as I mentioned earlier, include competitive efforts against Leigh, Wigan and Warrington. So there's now consistency building with the Giants. I think with them getting key pieces back in, I know Adam Clune, I'm actually not sure how long he's out for, but I think even without him, they've now started to build solid structure offensively. I think Flanagan is looking more and more comfortable. He's looking really good at the moment. And I think Lolohea, I think he looks a little bit more settled as well. And they just look more effective in possession. I think defensively, we've seen some resilient efforts against good attacking teams like Leigh and Wigan. Still maybe too many points conceded against Leigh, but the defence is now looking really resilient. And they're stringing decent attacking plays together. So I think Huddersfield are actually, based on consistency and performances, looking like a much stronger side compared to Catalans. I'm still slightly worried that I might just be giving Huddersfield a bit too much credit right now. So I'm going to make this a fairly close game because Catalans do still have those quality pieces in there. And they at least put in a good effort against Leigh, which may actually be backed up slightly this week. So for a prediction, I'm going to go with Catalans Dragons 18, Huddersfield Giants 26. Next up, we have the Castleford Tigers taking on the Wigan Warriors. Starting with form, Castle have won 2 in their last 5, Wigan have won 4 in their last 5. Now, the last 2 from Wigan haven't been up to their usual standard, but I think we still all acknowledge that they're a very strong side, they're very fast-paced, and they're defensively excellent. They're a defensively sound team. Castleford, on the other hand, this season, are quite the opposite. However, to get onto a bit of a positive about Cass, actually, I do think since Amon joined, they haven't been pinned back as much as a team, and they've started to make more ground through the middle. We did see early on in the season, it would be quite easy to pin them back inside the 40, sometimes 30, sometimes 20, sometimes 10 for an entire set. Sometimes Cass were being pinned in their own 10 for an entire set. But that's been a lot less common recently. I think with the players that they've been able to bring in, whether it was Desiree for a game or two, whether it's been Amon coming in, Singleton, whether it's been Atkin to help out either, in the backs or to play in the 9 or 13 role, with the people that they've brought in, I think they're starting to make better ground through the middle, and it's less easy to pin back. One thing that I think Castleford have done fairly well in some weeks as well, which I do really appreciate about Cass, because I do love intent and teams going for it. One thing that they're doing better recently to not get pinned back so much is they'll spread the ball deep in their own half early in the tackle count, which is what I'd love Warrington to start doing a bit more. But they're actually executing a fair bit, with both senior brothers getting some decent opportunities in recent weeks as well. We saw, I think it was Lewis Senior against... who was it? He had a long-range try that he scored. I can't remember who it was against. I want to say it was Hull FC, but I'm not entirely sure. But we saw against Hull Kingston Rovers in his senior, almost scoring what I would have possibly given the try of the season, until he offloaded it and then Senior dropped it on the line. But they are creating some line breaks inside their own half, which is a positive sign, which could help them to not be pinned back so much. However, I do think we'll see Cass have a go, because I've never faulted their efforts, it's just lack of quality. And I think Wigan, at some point, they'll want to respond and let KR know, we're still here, by the way. We ain't going anywhere, we're still here. So I think the forward pack will likely do a good job at pinning Cass back this week. I think the execution down the left-hand side with Smith and Sember, Wardle and Marshall, those usual... the usual combination. Whoever's going to be there over on the right as well, because they've had a few changes down the right-hand side. I think whoever's playing for Wigan, I think we'll likely see a decent scoreline for them. I think defensively, I don't know if there's much that Cass can do. I don't know if they can keep it as close as Huddersfield have and Wakefield have against Wigan in recent weeks. So yeah, I just think there's too much of a disparity. I like what Cass has been doing in some moments, but over 80 minutes, they're just the quality isn't there. The efforts are, the quality isn't. I think Wigan are still a fantastic side that will bounce back this week. So I'm going to go with Castleford Tigers 6, Wigan Warriors 40. Finally, for this round, we have St Helens taking on the Salford Red Devils. So starting with form, Saints have won 4 in their last 5 Super League games. Salford have won 0 in their last 5 Super League games. Now, these sides played 2 rounds ago, and Saints won 46-4. I'm not sure how similar the scoreline will be this time around, but I'm not too sure that much has changed in 2 weeks. So, I believe Joe Shorrocks will be missing this one for Salford. I think he's got a match ban. He has been a regular for this Salford side that has had a very irregular lineup, especially earlier on. I think it has still been fairly consistent in recent weeks, which is still a good sign. But there's another thing for Salford to adjust to. I think injuries and suspensions at this point are not going to help whilst they're trying to build a bit of cohesion. I think Shorrocks, given that he's been a regular, will be a much bigger miss than what missing one player would normally be for a Super League side. But I think given the problems at Salford, it will be a greater miss, if that makes sense. Saints did a great job against Leeds at the weekend, though. They looked really clear in their intent. I think their kicking game was actually pretty good, especially from Moses Mbai. I think his kicks were really, really solid. And the teamwork, the effort areas as a team, I think Saints looked more like the Saints that we've come to know over the past few years when they've been winning trophies and titles. That intent to work together as a unit, we saw that, and I think the prime example was the chase down against Ryan Hall. Yes, Ryan Hall is not the player that he used to be, especially in terms of pace, like size and carries, knowledge, all that good stuff. Finishing, yes. Pace, not so much. But you could see 6 players in the frame. The moment that interception was there, Hall made up about 10-20 metres, and then there's 6 Saints players in the frame chasing him down. And it's a great effort from Robertson and everyone else that was around in that tackle to get him into touch. A positive for Salford is that they have actually scored points in all of the last 5 Super League games. They scored, I think it was 16 against Cass 5 weeks ago. Then there was 10, I want to say it was against Hull FC, but then 6, 4 and 6. So they've actually been putting in consistent points in the last 5 games, which is a positive. And I think maybe they can do that again this week, because St Helens, yes, put in a professional performance against Leeds, but the evidence for the majority of the season has shown us that They still aren't a perfect attacking side. They're a solid defensive side, but they can have lapses. So I do think Salford may get some points this week, but Saints I'm expecting will be fairly similar to how it was 2 weeks ago, and I expect them to be completely dominant in this one. And as I say, without Joe Shorrocks, I think the size of St Helens through the middle, I think will likely be their biggest asset. I don't think they'll have to focus too much on spreading the ball and creating line breaks, which they could still do fairly easily, but I think they'll probably bully them through the middle, to be honest. So I'm going to go with St Helens 42, Salford Red Devils 6. So there you have my Super League Round 16 predictions. If you guys have your own, please do let me know in the comments section down below. Also, let me know how you guys got on last week whilst I was having an absolute shocker. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like. It does help to get the video out there to more people. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with more Kinetic Rugby League content. And if you'd like to check out either the interview with Leroy Cudjoe, there's a link in the description down below. Or if you'd like to become a member, you can do by clicking the join button below this video and joining for as little as £1 per month. But that's going to be it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.